Do you think the quality, Rick? I mean, us in an ideal market, we want to see the price go down and the quality go up. What's your opinion? Do you think getting there as far as the quality goes in comparison to what's coming to market in the beginning? I mean, what do you think?
Well, I think the quality is way improved. I mean, when we started Big Daddy's in 2009, the quality wasn't there. And even in the MMFLA, there were a couple strains that we had that were really good, but not like what we have now, where the terps are really prominent, where you're getting an outstanding, when you have an Agent Orange and it really smells like a freshly peeled navel orange, or I love the citrusy, so I gravitate to those, like a Tangy and things of that nature. We've really seen some expressive strains, but the fact is, when you look at what Redemption Cannabis is doing and Real Leaf and Franklin Fields, they're putting out in rare, they're putting out some serious quality cannabis.
Yes.
And it really gets to the point where once you've had one of their joints, you don't want to go back to what's the Sky Mint, 6 different flavors, and that's about all you get.
Yeah,
you know?
I mean, I gotta disagree a little bit on. There's some really good flower Redemption for sure out there making some great stuff. But back in the day, when people would come in with just a big sack and you just get it straight from their grow,
the caregiver ones, yes.
Well, those are the people
packaged.
It's a few of those people that are responsible for what's good in the commercial market. Those who are able to transition and scale up. And there's a few of them. And
yeah,
I totally agree.
I've been able to do that quite well. But I'm just saying, like, I think there were more terps back then, in my opinion, coming out of the bag.
Small batch.
Well, you got to find
gardens.
it more now.
Yeah.
Now I think it's like I have a show on Cannabis Lifestyle TV called Dank Deezer Boof, and my business partner Trey and I go to different dispensaries and try the smoke and give our ranking. Is it dank? Is it decent? Or is it boof? And now we're trying to do a number system, because I'm really big on terpenes. Even if it's not the flavor I'm into, if it has a flavor, then I have something to say. If there's no flavor, it's boof right away. And more times than not, we've only got a couple danks, and they all came from Franklin Field. So. And it wasn't even biased. One of them was a boof initially, and then the rest were all danks. But it boils down to what sells in the market isn't necessarily what the most flavorful stuff is. It's the names that people see a picture on Instagram. Majority of the people in my comment section talk about the wedding cakes, which they haven't had the phenotype that's dank, or the Mac 1s that, again, not the right phenotype. They don't understand the pheno variations and the fact that degradations and terpenes with the storage on some of these places too. They'll go to a big retail like Planet 13 in Las Vegas and wonder why their cookies isn't the same as it is in a little small place in California. It's like, well, it's just not treated the same. And to scale it to this point.
Remediation too, Rob. I mean, come on. We all know that when they zap that stuff or when they ozonate it, that absolutely affects terp quality. So if you're talking about, a Skittles, let's just say from Port Huron, it's not going to be the same as a Skittles from Traverse City. And that really means that you can't actually touch, see, smell, feel the cannabis buds like you used to be able to when it's caregiver cannabis. You can only go based on the name. Prepackaged bud means you have to go on the reputation of the grower or the name of the strain. And the name of the strain doesn't really mean anything, because like you talked about, with the huge variation between different samples carrying the same moniker.
Yeah, or who brands it. I mean,
everybody wants to have the ice cream cake, and it doesn't matter who grows it, it's ice cream cake. Everybody's got the white truffle. It's like, do you really have this? You have this cut. You have this particular cut, and you're growing that.
And that's the disadvantage of being people like ourselves, including you, Rob, is that we've really had some of the best wedding cakes. So now when you try to put some wedding cake on the top shelf, and it's like, I can barely get the flavor, and it looks just like those other 3 samples too. So wedding cake, maybe, but it's not an expressive version of that particular pheno.
That's a skill thing too. I mean, the skill that drying and curing cannabis properly is an art, and I think it takes a long time for people to grasp not only like the science behind it, but the art. And the folks that treat it as a commodity their product is gonna reflect, and the people that treat it with love and respect, you're gonna get that product that you can put your nose into and smell the strawberries or the oranges or the essence of whatever that flower is.
Yeah, I totally agree. There's something to be said too. In some cases, you have to continue to burp your jars when you get it back from a dispensary and something, because it doesn't burn correctly, and you're still basically curing it at home after you purchased it from a dispensary. That's something that I find kind of tough, but it's good to know that information. If you have cannabis that doesn't smoke correctly, it's you have to relight it again and again, and it's a good idea to stop smoking it and burp
crackling and popping if you're hitting it.
So some people are here.
Like
keep going, Anthony. Yeah, some people are bringing up the how like the way of pre-packaging being so.
I hate pre-packaging.
And it is for a lot of people, and then and it takes a little bit longer to get people to trust that brand and to always know that somebody really cares about that. Even though it's prepackaged, you can't do it deli style and kind of get an idea of the essence and a little bit more about its appeal before trying it, as you could, for something that's not prepackaged. And
well, dude, pre-rolls are the prime example of a Trojan horse of your fucking trim. Like, I literally only until I had Franklin Field's pre-rolls, it's the only time I've had flavor out of any of them. Pre-rolls were a joke to me forever. I'm like, they just literally are just bamboozling people in these $15 trim joints.
Like spam.
And they care about the THC number, so you have one.
Yeah, as long as you
care
get a
that it's 20% or more or something like
We're
that.
in the 30% club. It's like that's
the hot dog of weed, right?
So there was just a good article by Kyle Kaminsky in the City Pulse about that, and he started off because this guy writes for the City Pulse and covers a lot of cannabis issues and things like that. Also does like a review column and goes around and gets products. And he started off this column by saying, "Look, I admit that I've been doing this all wrong. I've really been, caring about the THC number and making sure that's part of my evaluation and all this kind of stuff. I'm realizing now that I shouldn't be doing that." And then they went on to describe and get feedback from various people around Lansing and how they deal with that and what their views are on it. And it's really a weird thing because it's definitely still ingrained in the marketplace, but it's something that a lot of people know doesn't really mean anything.
Define
a situation to be in.
Define a lot of people, though. I mean, there are a ton of folks that, as Rob mentioned, they're interested in making a purchase based on which celebrity happens to have his lips wrapped around one in an advertisement, not necessarily digging into the actual structural details. So a lot of the people we know care about that, but I'm not sure that that's a significant percentage of the market.
I don't think it is either. I think a lot of people who sell it know it, and it's a really weird dilemma to be in and have to like balance that concept of knowing this is what people want. So do we give into it a little bit to get the market going, or at what point do we start getting over the hump and getting a new perspective that's more up to date, more useful?
Well, people are vain. Look at McDonald's recently having like random rappers having meals that are like just regular food, but it's their meal. You know what I'm saying? Like Travis Scott had a meal, and Saweetie had a meal, and I'm like, that's interesting. And now I think Nelly has a meal at Burger King, and the relevance makes no sense, but that's the branding gimmick. It's this marketing thing that they're taking from mainstream businesses, and they say what we'll do is find a celebrity endorsement. We'll put their name on there. Look at George Foreman with the George Foreman grill. Evander Holyfield turned it down, thought it was a joke. Holyfield jumped on it, or not Holyfield, Foreman jumped on it, has made millions and millions, $250 million. And so they're doing it in the cannabis industry now. Lil Wayne, Burner's done the best of it in terms of branding because he's more known for that than his rap career, in my opinion. And
Cookies is going to London. They're going international. Yes, I just saw that on MJ.
Listen, I will fully. I love what Burner does in terms of branding, but I've tried so many different cultivars of theirs from here to Las Vegas, and I have had no flavor in any of them. None of them. Pretty, you can feel that behind the eyes, but like no flavor.
Do you think that's a result of selecting based on THC percentage?
THC and probably yield, like in terms of growing.
Right, yeah, to be commercial, right? You're good. You're right.
Well, you go into prime example. Another shout out to Franklin Fields. I'm wearing their hat even. They don't sponsor me. I don't work there. But I was just so impressed with the authenticity of how they grow. But you go and look at Pug's Breath, prime example. I would probably grow it because I like abuse, I guess, and I like to grow these tough cultivars. But that one was just a spindly nothing one, but it was so dank. In comparison to next to it, you've got, I forgot the name of the other one because it was so irrelevant in terms of they didn't care, but it yielded very well. And they were like, yeah, we're probably going to push this one on, but you have to balance it out. So a lot of these commercial grows are focusing heavy on ease of grow, yield, how long it's going to grow, and the popular name. They're not necessarily thinking about quality.
Jamie, would you go back to that comment from Spartan Grown so we can just address that real quick?
Yep. Is it?
And I'll read it out. This one here. Spartan Grown writes, for those who are our audience that is audio only. Let me read this for you real quick. Spartan Grown writes, regulations strive to focus on THC also. They require testing for major cannabinoids, but not terpenes. That just shows that policymakers don't understand the medicine side of cannabis. You're absolutely right.
Absolutely.
The policymakers that didn't understand that were in 2016, the legislature that laid down the rules for the MMFLA, which outlined what they wanted to test for, pesticides and THC, and they didn't really care about anything else. And then in the MRTMA, the adult use program, there's greater freedom for testing than there is under the MMFLA, but still, lawmakers don't mandate things because they don't think that the industry wants it. And they don't think that because guys like Steve Linder are in their ear talking to them saying, you know what, we don't want to have to test for extra stuff. I mean, have you seen some of the labels and some of the packaging? They can barely fit on there right now.
I know
what they are required to say, that the font is so small. I have to get out a jeweler's loop just to be able to read the shit.
The pregnancy warning is long and inappropriate and unnecessary.
Yeah,
it takes up some of that space.
And I've been to a few places like Rare in Muskegon. They surprised me with how it's very terpene focused. You look in the packaging and there's a lot of everything's laid out like that, and even the selection is very terpene focused. And I think the future of cannabis will be there. Yeah,
and they're trying to get away from caring about the
THC is not really that relevant,
or sativa or indica even.
Yeah,
they go by a color scheme kind of, and it's based on what the general feedback has been, not trying to tell you this is the effect that you are going to get. That's been
and science shows that sativa and indica is going to be for us growers in terms of how we can identify those tall lanky fuckers who go 10 12 weeks and the short squatties that are 6 to 8, even if you're really lucky 6, but that's not often. But in terms of smoke, they're seeing it's the terpenes and the flavonoids. It's those other cannabinoids that are doing it that are really giving you that effect, where certain ones are going to be more on the indica side, certain ones are going to be more on the sativa side in terms of those traditional thought process. So people are more and more in the actual good consumers and good growers who aren't just the random guys who went to college and found an investor. They're going to end up getting into the area of what does the consumer want? The consumer wants to be able to pick what they're looking for. You don't go buy beer and it's just, this is this percent alcohol, this percent alcohol. You're going to get a Pilsner, IPA, like these specific things. So why don't we have a situation like that with cannabis yet? It's crazy.
Well, again, I think it goes back to educating the public. The public is so slow to change when it comes to information that they've already known. And you're going to get a lot of people that will just never believe THC isn't the most important thing. They just won't, because that's what they've been told. So what we're talking about here is probably a generations long change in order to get society to switch the way that we think they should switch. And unfortunately, I don't like to wait generations. I want that shit now. I want people to straighten their ass up, and it's probably not likely to happen on my scale.
So once something's been internalized, even from a scientific perspective, it's very difficult to change or to be open enough to take new information and make changes of perspective with it. And some of the studies, in part, are based on already internalizing some of these misnomers and ad populum kind of beliefs. And so they themselves then become tainted or flawed because they assumed things like THC is the thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
or cannabis does this or that, that type of thing, or the sativa has that extra quality to it, or whatever it is, it skews the vision. Go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, if I may, to Rob's point about, testing for terpenes, it would be great if that was part of the law in some fashion. I think it would be great to have that in there, because here's why. The thing with terpenes, when they're gone, one of my biggest worries is that there was mold on the grow and they brought in the machines. I think they're O2 machines or machines that will clear it out, and they actually strip the terpenes from the plant just to relieve it of its mold or mildew. And that
kill
makes
any biologicals. Yeah.
That makes it passable in some cases, and that's wrong. I think that's completely wrong.
Well, I certainly think people should be looking at the terpenes, looking at more information of what's inside of the plant and the ensemble of things that are working synergistically to work with your individual system to see what's going on. I just don't think that it should necessarily be mandated.
Well, and especially, why can I go buy alcohol that's whatever the fuck it is, or tobacco is what it's going to kill me? I know it's going to kill me, but I assume that risk when I purchase it, because we live in a free country, though. But when it comes to cannabis, medical, okay, keep it, do whatever. But recreational, let me sign a waiver that says I understand this was grown with this, and this, don't give a shit. I smoked Mexican brickweed that had cocoons and rocks in it back in the day.
Actual diesel fuel in it, probably.
Like, it's okay.
Cocoons and rocks.
I'm smoking once as we speak. I'm okay.
Somebody's toenail.
Yeah, but for some reason we can't. Back when it was caregivers who were bringing smoke there, like I went to dozen places in Ann Arbor, and it was always so dank. And we were getting like $30, $35 eights, and I was like, this is fire, dude. And no branding. I mean, it was just a package or a container, but it was still really good quality. And then why did that change? What shifted? No one died. Nothing happened there. It was literally lobbyists who went and pushed to say that it's harmful meds and we're hurting the patients. Listen, they assume the risk when they purchase it, when they get it.
And so the other thing about these studies is that they are repackaged to lean in a particular direction and suggest things and infer things without having actually there been a conclusion about something. So cannabis may, it seems as though it points to, that kind of stuff. Those are out there all over the place, skewing the vision of cannabis and its place in what it does and doesn't do.
Yep.
The problem
Go ahead, Anton, please.
I was going to say the problem too is when the truth gets out, when the actual science catches up to the fact of what some of these terpenes are doing, like mycerine and lemon, like these terpenes that are helping people with anxiety and helping people, cancer patients. When that truth gets out there, big pharma ain't going to want that shit. They're not going to like it, right? So there's always going to be that barrier, that catch up that we're going to have to play to show the true medicinal qualities. Because I mean, think about the money. I can't even imagine if we're treating cancer patients with targeted cannabinoid therapy. I mean, what if that becomes a thing someday?
Think about this.
Enough.
It already is.
Not as profitable.
True. Yeah, it already is.
All it boils down
I mean,
to.
in like a hospital, setting.
No, I know that'd be amazing, but unfortunately, these assholes that's never the focus. It seems
the big health systems are too scared to incorporate.
Yeah, well, they're gonna lose what's already there. It's just like when you deal with like big oil or places like that. The change is scary. You potentially lose billions of dollars. I guess I can see from the evil capitalistic standpoint, but when you take away ethics and those like that, the conversation pisses me off because you got too many people who have the science already that can help people, but they refuse to just let people try it on their own. Homeopathic things.
They have to exhaust every other avenue. They have to exhaust all the man-made options first before they can try something natural.
I think so too. This is really why it explains why we shouldn't allow one company like Viridis to control 60% of the market on any stage of it. Because anytime you allow one company to get so big, then they become, remember the phrase, too big to fail? Can't let them fail. They're too important to the industry. Let me just say too, we talk about terpenes and we've talked a lot about it today. A lot of cannabis retailers in Michigan try and sell based on terpenes actually, because they do what's called need states. So you walk into, say, Common Citizen, and I actually did this here in Flint. They have like a wakey, sleepy, midday energy kind of a thing. So they try to describe different need states, and how they define that is not by THC, but how they define that is by the associated terpenes. The problem being, if you've got wakey and you're offering me 9 different strains, I doubt seriously 9 different strains are actually going to possess the wakey quality. And anytime you come in, you try and assign a different strain to one of these particular need states, they don't always represent. And I think when people have their first cannabis experience, or when they're trying the regulated market for the first time, and they try to oversimplify the sales process to sort of make it easier for bud tenders to sell, I guess. I think people get the wrong impression. They get something that doesn't satisfy, they didn't honor the promise that they made in the retail store because they didn't get the effect they were expecting, and so they don't believe in the whole system.
Well, this is why you look at most pharmaceutical drugs aren't named just the effect. It's named some sort of crazy long name that people could barely say, because realistically, just like with most things, everybody's endocannabinoid system is a little different. So how our brain reacts to these terpenes and all the different cannabinoids may be a little different from the next person. If, let's say, you have an ailment, like you broke a limb and you take a Norco, you're not going to feel the pain. Well, you're going to feel the buzz. But if you take a Norco and you got no issues, you're going to get a buzz. So it all depends on whatever ailment or whatever thing that it's being treated with. So I feel like giving it a general name is ignorant on their part. It may work for a small test group, but there could be that certain person who has a chemical imbalance or, again, different endocannabinoid makeup that's going to change the way that they interpret that cannabis. So it's tough to say, like, for me, a sativa chills me out. Like, I'm more focused and cerebral, and I'm not so all over the place. And indica makes me lethargic and kind of just out of it and, like, not really motivated to do anything.
See, if you sell I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, it just depends on the individual, you know?
So if you sell a person on the terpenes, if you educate them and so they know when they try a particular strain that this is a myrcene dominant or a pinene dominant, and then they get a certain effect, and the next time they go, they try something with a different terp dominance. Now they're educated to the point where they can go into any distribution center as long as they've got that information, and they can pick a strain that matches their needs, because it doesn't matter what the title of the strain is. Blueberry cookies a la titties, who knows, right? I mean, some of the strain names are designed to be attractive, not necessarily designed to describe effect. So the strain name means almost nothing. So if you know what your terp profile is for what you're trying to achieve, you should be able to select cannabis that meets that.
Doesn't matter what it's called. Doesn't matter what the other percentages of things are.
Yes.
You recognize those components that show up consistently when you get the desired outcome, from that product.
And that's where the fine balance between medical and recreational come into play, because medical, but I mean, they're all kind of the same in terms of one's going to affect you a certain way, one will affect you another way. But at the same time, why you don't have a name that's going to make sense for somebody could scare somebody away. Like, I used to like green crack a lot, and I tell people that I'm always like, it's not like crack cocaine. It's got to, you know what I'm saying? Like, you have to tell these people, or even like a Death Star, even like just certain things. Like, if you're a Star Wars fan, I guess it'd be cool. But
Giraffe Poontang, right?
Yeah, like there's certain names that don't sound attractive. I mean,
Grandma's
there's been
Alaskan
Cat piss
breath. Yeah, cat piss, cheetah piss. It sounds nasty, but most of it are pretty good, and it's going to scare away the average consumer. Now, the stoner who's been smoking since before we knew about medical shit, but we knew about medical shit, all just bro science. We're different. We're going to think different. But then the average person who's just trying it, they're not going to know what to get. They're going to be like, I'm just going to get the Blue Dream, or I'm going to get the nice thing here. And it's like, that may not work for you. And the bud tender oftentimes is just some decent looking chick who doesn't really know a whole lot.
And names change is the same thing.
Yeah. But if you know the last time you had that chronic, it was really strong in blah, blah, whatever myrcene, whatever terpene you can come up with. If you know that was really how you defined that chronic, then you can get more predictably achieve that exact same experience, knowing that as long as that terp profile is available. And it doesn't matter.
Are the key things.
Again, there's so many different ways to be advantaged by that system, but it does take an education on the part of the retailers, and it takes an education on the part of the consuming public too. So, and certainly there's always going to be a push for higher THC numbers, because that's the easiest metric that our consumer public has to gauge cannabis effectiveness, even though we know it's totally inadequate. So that emphasis is not going to go away on the part of brands or branding. So that's why I say it's a generational thing. It's going to take a long time for people to come into this understanding.
I remember in the old days, dispensary in Ypsilanti and these weird names or that we just discussed would come in, and we are trying to be very careful. There's a lot of scrutiny going on. We were in a lucky place in Lucky County with a prosecutor that wasn't making it a big deal. We were able to get our local city to actually approve us and that type of stuff, different than what was going on in other places. But the idea of calling something really medical, like, Alaskan Thunderfuck or something like that, or Giraffe Poontang or whatever we're talking about here, so we used to, for a while, we used to try to, change those names to something else. But after a little bit, we just decided we'll go with what they are. Some people do identify with them. It's because of the prohibition and things being underground that these names even came out in the first place.
Yeah.
Sadly, that's what it is.
Some of them were like for veterans too, like Agent Orange, changing that.
Yeah, that'd be awful.
Yeah.
Why you're gonna trigger PTSD on somebody who's trying to get medical help potentially. Like,
yeah,
there's certain things that don't make sense there, and I think that's where if there's less like. I have a friend named Chad and I have a friend named Brad, but we call them Chads and Brads in the industry. If there's less Chads and Brads out there who are just like, dude, that would be dope, and they call these great plants crazy ass names, it's a turnoff for a lot of people. Like, you can't do that. You can have a nickname with your buddies, but it's tough when you try to get to the market and you're trying to break through the stigma and be professional, because we're always going to be looked at as these hidden underground people if we always got these weird things,
Bob Saget just passed away, and it's in very, very frequently cited in some of these RIP stories is the fact that Bob Saget has a strain of cannabis named after him. Now, they didn't do that because it smells like Bob Saget or because it gets you high like Bob Saget. They did it for marketing purposes, right? The same reason we have Obama Kush, right? So for a lot of people, the name itself is not indicative even of the quality of the cannabis. It's just used as a marketing tool.
Yeah,
so that's
an
why
identification tool even.
Yeah,
we had way back in the old days, we had Mike's Purple Cox, which was named after the Attorney General at the time, Mike Cox.
Yes, that's
and
true.
Jennifer Granholm's Kush.
Yeah, when she was governor. Yeah.
It's so misleading too, because good glue, good Gorilla Glue back in the day, or grown by a good caregiver, and some glue that you might get at some wherever ain't going to be the same. So the name is not indicative. It's not consistency. There's no consistency to the name, and so it's really misleading.
And there's there's different types like within that. People pop different seeds. There's like these dominant types.
Yeah, you get the phenotypes out of it.
Hey Jamie, let's just quickly read the Spartan Grown message. He talks about Agent Orange, and Spartan Grown says Jazz Cabbage Cafe. Actually, Agent Orange is a tribute to all the vets who suffered from it for the war. The breeder's father got very sick from Agent Orange, and the strain helped him out. So we stand better informed on that.
I believe it. I just say that there's still probably people who still don't know the backstory and are like, "What the fuck?"
Yeah, I didn't know that backstory at all. We always change it to a orange skunk at Oma Medicine, just to because vets would come in and go, "Why have you named it this?"
Oma Medicine's a place I actually frequented over in Ann Arbor.
Right, you need the context. Well, there's the Jim was the manager there back when it was a really good place.
No shit. Yeah, it had good vibes, man. I was like, oh, this is cool. I got to talk like deep philosophy with the guy in there who was showing us about bud. Like we got deep and forgot we were even getting bud.
Great.
That's right.
Home of Medicine was the coolest vibe, the coolest vibe, had great music, had
like
great
you're in an art gallery.
Seriously, dude.
It was
like in a nice restaurant.
Club would be. Yeah.
Comedy shows, everything was fun.
It was a standard.
Fuck yeah, man.
A dank, but I never got one bad piece of flour from y'all back in the day. I mean, everything was top quality that I ever tried.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Man.
And that's what Jim was trying to say. Like those were all, caregivers who gave a shit that, that a lot of people showed up. I was in the city next door. There's a lot of people show up with a lot of different things, and it got to be kind of
it was the Backpack Boogie, right? It was the Backpack Boogie. Guys would come in, and if you could smell them before they got to the office, you knew you were going to be buying something, right?
Yeah.
So.